A video featuring a Russian woman in a harsh and uncensored manner describing what's happening to prices and small businesses in Russia since the new year is making headlines on social media. The recording was made in a car on a regular phone. "I was really shocked by the prices," she says. She emphasizes that she didn't buy anything extra, only the bare essentials. But even the basic shopping basket cost almost 3,000 rubles, even though the bag was half empty. The woman also noted the widespread closure of stores and restaurants in Russia. Advertisements for businesses to sell, she said, are appearing in droves on classifieds websites, with owners citing rising taxes and the impossibility of continuing to operate. She emphasizes that this isn't the limit. Utility rates in Russia haven't increased yet, meaning the biggest blows are still to come. Utility rate increases in Russia this year are planned in 2 stages, in the first half of the year and in September, immediately after the Duma elections. The most emotional moment is when a woman asks a simple question: how can you survive on an average salary of 30,000 rubles in these prices? She says she lives alone without family, but even so, the money disappears quickly, and she has no idea what to do for those with children. The phrase, "we're already below the minimum," in the video isn't a figure of speech, but a statement. At the end, she says outright, "This is just the beginning. Things will get worse." Now, many in Russia believe that the government should be held accountable for this. Recall, Russia's oil and gas revenues have reached historic proportions. According to the Russian Ministry of Finance, 8.5 trillion rubles entered the treasury this year, the lowest in 6 years, and a full 24% less than in 2024. The key blow came in December. Then the budget received only 447 billion rubles, compared to 790 billion the year before. A 43% decline was a clear result of the failed raw materials policy. The reason is simple and painful for the Kremlin. The average price of Russian Urals crude oil fell to $39.18 per barrel in December. This level was known in advance, but the budget continued to be based on inflated expectations. As a result, actual revenues were 2.3 trillion rubles below initial projections. Even the Ministry of Finance's September estimates had to be urgently revised, but even they failed to save the situation. The authorities expect to collect 8.9 trillion rubles in oil and gas revenues in 2026. However, at current prices and the ruble exchange rate, the shortfall could reach 3 to 3.5 trillion rubles. This is no longer a risk, but an almost guaranteed scenario. Experts warn that if this scenario unfolds, the National Welfare Fund will be almost completely depleted. After that, Russia will have only one option: printing money and rising inflation, which will ultimately damage the ruble and the economy. The Ministry of Finance expects a 232 billion ruble shortfall in oil and gas revenues as early as January. To support the ruble, foreign currency sales are increasing, but this mechanism only works until the National Welfare Fund is depleted. When the reserves run out, Russia's financial stability will be in question. The cost of war, sanctions, and dependence on oil is becoming increasingly clear. Amid mass protests in Iran and tough statements from US President Donald Trump regarding the Iranian regime, Washington is deploying an aircraft carrier to the Middle East. Fox News reports this, citing military sources. They say the increased American military presence is intended to expand the White House's options if it decides to strike Iran. At the same time, the United States is preparing to deploy additional forces by air and land, as well as strengthen missile defenses. The moves are part of what officials described as a force generation process. The deployment of air defense systems to protect American bases and Israel is planned. According to one source, if the White House occupant orders the use of force, it will be something different, more aggressive than previous U.S. military operations in the region. The source said Washington is preparing a number of scenarios that will depend on how the Iranian regime acts in the coming days. Currently, there are approximately 30,000 American military personnel in the U.S. Central Command's area of responsibility in the Middle East region. 2 additional aircraft carriers stationed near Norfolk and San Diego are currently not deployed. Meanwhile, Trump, speaking to reporters, commented on media reports that the Persian Gulf countries dissuaded him from attacking Iran. According to the president, no one tried to persuade him to abandon the strike on Iran, but he convinced himself. The Oval Office leader was also asked whether his promise to provide aid to Iranian protesters still stands, to which he replied, "We'll see." Media previously published a statement from Trump in which he said he respected the Iranian leadership's decision to cancel the executions of protesters. "I deeply respect that all executions scheduled for yesterday, over 800, were cancelled by the Iranian leadership. Thank you," Trump wrote. Earlier, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced that the Iranian regime had cancelled the execution of 800 protesters scheduled for January the 14th. In late December 2025, mass protests erupted in Iran over the devaluation of the national currency. They quickly escalated into unrest and spread throughout the country. People demanded the resignation of 86-year-old Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and burned mosques and IRGC military bases. The regime's response was extremely brutal. With Moscow's help, the internet was shut down throughout Iran, and security forces began violently suppressing the uprising, including with firearms. Media reported that media outlets named 3 countries that dissuaded Trump from striking Iran. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Oman played a key role in preventing a possible U.S. military attack on the regime in Iran. The Time of Israel reported this, citing a senior Saudi Arabian official familiar with the progress of the negotiations. States in the region were extremely concerned that a military scenario could lead to large-scale destabilization of the Middle East. The source noted that the 3 countries led a sustained, intense, and urgent diplomatic effort to persuade President Trump at the last minute to give Iran a chance to demonstrate goodwill. He clarified that these were very intensive behind-the-scenes negotiations with Washington.